Lisbon.
Very good afternoon. Today, with the visit from the President of the European Council, Charles Michel, we officially begin the Portuguese presidency. This is our fourth presidency. The first under the aegis of the Treaty of Lisbon. And so it is a presidency that is different from the ones before. We want to work closely with all institutions, but in particular with the President of the Council. It's been a pleasure to work with him for the past 5 years, first as colleagues, prime ministers, and now, since he was elected President of the Council, we will be working closely in another capacity for the next 6 months. We looked at the calendar for the topics to be analysed until June and looked at the three priorities of the Portuguese presidency. Firstly, economic recovery. After the extraordinary work done by the German presidency, it is now time to deliver for a fair, green and digital recovery. And so it is essential that national parliaments approve the increase in the own resources ceiling, and the European Parliament must also approve the regulation. But that means that the 27 national recovery plans must be approved. Recovery will hinge on two pillars: the climate and the digital transitions. These are opportunities for greater development of European economies. So the approval of the law, climate, and progress in the digital package presented by the Commission recently are two of our main priorities. We also want to develop the social pillar of the European Union. We need to be able to face the challenges of the digital and climate transitions. That means qualifications, investing in the transition that will allow everybody to move forward together, leaving no one behind. The third priority is to increase the strategic autonomy of a Europe open to the world, a Europe that is a global player, a Europe that is present in the different value chains, but that rejects protectionism and remains open to the world. In this openness to the world, we need plurality. We need to develop partnerships to the east and to the south, the strategic partnership with the African continent. We need to strengthen transatlantic relations. Now that we have a new president-elect in the United States, we need to look to Latin American relations and open also to the East. There is going to be an EU-India summit, but we also need to negotiate important trade agreements with other players in that region, such as Australia and New Zealand. The European Union is a marathon. Every 6 months, we pass on the baton. It's a relay. We hold on to that baton for 6 months before handing it over to the next presidency. It is a tremendous honor to have received the baton from Chancellor Merkel, and it will be an enormous honor to hand the baton over to the Slovenian presidency in 6 months' time. Until then, we have 6 months ahead of us, intense work. And I'm sure that with the cooperation of the President of the Council, we will be working closely together to strengthen the European Union and to promote a fair, green and digital recovery. Thank you, Charles. Welcome. Thank you very much. Thank you for the warm welcome. I wish I could speak Portuguese as well as you can speak French. Regrettably, that's not the case. However, I am here to show the support for the presidency. We've been working together for a number of years, and I'm feeling optimistic. Much like the symbol of the Portuguese presidency, the sun representing light and hope, 2020 was a very difficult year. It was a brutal year for the world. We had the COVID-19 crisis that hit us hard and left us in turmoil. That now gives us an opportunity to reaffirm our priorities: unity, trust. Unity needs to be worked on constantly. It requires effort, dialogue, mutual understanding, and the ability to decide together, collectively. The Portuguese presidency begins in 2021. Last year was a year of where COVID-19 caused a shock. We are now meet together. The European Commission, the governments came together to make sure that we had the vaccines, and as we've just heard, we know that before the end of the month of January there'll be a video conference, heads of state and government, so that once again we can focus on the management of the COVID-19 crisis, where we'll need to roll out the vaccines and look at all the tools available to us to limit the spread of the virus. We need to take control of the virus, make sure that we are able to control it. And then the three priorities outlined very clearly by the Prime Minister, António Costa, indicate that they are in line with the medium and long-term objectives of the European Union. Economic recovery is also important. This represents hope, but also the need to mobilize specific, concrete financial instruments. We were able to mobilize 750,000 million euros, and this is very important for our citizens. We have the digital agenda to consider, the climate agenda to consider, two important pillars that the Portuguese presidency will also be focusing on. We also have the climate agreement to consider, validated at the end of December, looking forward to 2030, the ambition of climate neutrality, for looking at the horizon of 2050. We are, in the European Union, a body that wants to use the climate challenge as an opportunity to promote more development, more prosperity, improve standards of living. Portugal has a lot of experience in this field, and this, of course, will be very useful at the European level as well. The second point to consider is the social pillar. I like the expression used by the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Portugal, who said that this is a Europe for people. We can't forget that the European project has to consider the well-being, the quality of life of its citizens, of its people. It's more than a financial project. It is a project that is underpinned by values. There will be a meeting in May that will be very important. We'll be preparing this, working closely together so that we can, in the Council, with our teams, signal how important this field is to us, the added value of the European Union, of all its citizens that require dignity and education. We need to fight in terms of correcting inequalities, and we believe that this is therefore a very important moment in the European project. A third point, the global Europe. A Europe that uses the tools available to it, 450 million citizens. It's an economic force, a commercial force, It has the ability to innovate, the ability to express its position in the international arena. And of course, that means that the European Union has to be an engaged partner in multilateral terms, participate in international cooperation, and it has to raise the challenges, face up to the challenges that the whole world faces. And that means there will be very important meetings. So we heard about the summit with India. This will be a very important meeting. We are talking about climate change. We're talking about the need for investment. The principle of reciprocity is also something we must consider. Transatlantic relations. We have talked about the fact that we need to define the priorities in relations with different parts of the world. We mustn't forget Africa. To the south of Europe, we need to work together with them on different projects. And so the 1st of January is also an important date. We know because one country has left the European Union, but there are agreements that were signed, that were concluded at the end of last year that will now need to be implemented. So it's an ambitious agenda. I say ambitious in a positive sense, but there is a great desire to work together. I'm sure that the Prime Minister will be strong in his European convictions, and I'm sure that in the north, south, east and west, everywhere across this continent, we will be sitting in the same sailboat, making sure that the European Union works to defend the interests of its 450 million citizens.
From the State Television of Portugal, RTP, Mr. President, what would be the main crucial priority for the Portuguese presidency among all of that, and the best advice that you can give to the Portuguese presidency? And Primeiro-Ministro, Sr. Primeiro-Ministro António Costa, a vacinação.
For the Prime Minister, universal vaccination of all Europeans is one of the challenges the Portuguese presidency faces. At the end of this presidency, what stage do you think the vaccination rollout will be at? Very quickly, 2 points. I think the Prime Minister clearly explained the Portuguese presidency's priorities, and of course the economic upturn is important. The social pillar is important, needs to be green, it needs to be a digital recovery, so that we have a more solid, more robust European Union, so that we can implement the decisions taken. I think this is very important for the European Union. In July 2020 at the Brussels summit, we decided to borrow together, to invest together. So this common future requires mobilization also of the digital and green pillars. And I'm sure that António has a lot of experience at European and national levels. I don't have much advice to give him, but he knows that he can count on my personal involvement, but also the commitment of the European Commission. We're a team, and we will work together as best we can. So we will be working in close collaboration over the next 6 months. António has strong convictions when it comes to the European arena, and I'm sure he will be able to attain the objectives he has laid out. So the optimism is well placed. One of the most important decisions that the European Commission took last year was the decision to acquire vaccines jointly. And we were able to ensure simultaneous distribution of vaccines across all member states, taking into account the different population. This was important for Europe and for its citizens. We drew closer to our citizens, showing them the added value of Europe. We didn't fight over masks and gel like at the beginning of the crisis we saw. We were able to guarantee that vaccines would be provided to all our peoples. Now, often we realize that science has done an extraordinary thing by developing this vaccine in such a short period. Usually it takes around 4 years to develop a vaccine. And so great effort has been made across all our states to now distribute and inoculate the population, distribute the vaccines and inoculate the population. So there is political will and there is availability to consider. We have 6 contracts that were signed by the European Union with specific calendars and delivery dates. We cannot vaccinate if we haven't yet received the vaccine. So throughout 2021, based on availability of vaccines, of course the industry will have to produce the vaccines. The vaccines are required throughout the world, not just in Europe. We have contracts. We've increased the numbers requested from 2 different companies. We're all very hopeful that the European Medicines Agency will be able to approve the projects that it is currently looking at. But we also know that no vaccination will be approved unless it is considered safe. And we need to feel safe when we are vaccinated. The rollout of the vaccines is taking place as we speak in a normal fashion. We hope that the vaccines that are available will be administered as quickly as possible. We hope that those that are still being developed will rapidly be made available so that we have the greatest number of different vaccines out there to make sure that we administer vaccines as quickly as possible to all those who need them. There can be no solid economic recovery only with a recovery plan or only with a multi-annual financial framework. We need the vaccine to wipe out the pandemic so that the economic recovery actually can take place. Good afternoon, Elder Gomes, Expresso newspaper. Question for the Prime Minister. Do you not fear that the case of José Guerra, the prosecutor, may cast a shadow on the beginning of the Portuguese presidency of the Council of the European Union? And do you think that certain important portfolios will move forward during the semester, such as human rights? And Charles Michel? Could you tell us how you see the situation developing this presidency? Well, I think the topic you raised is not relevant when it comes to the presidency. When it comes to the presidency, we're going to focus on 3 priorities, but there are other important issues to consider. Migrations. There's a pact for migrations presented by the Commission that's important. It's very ambitious and contains a number of different important elements in it. We will do our utmost to move that discussion forward in the informal Council of Ministers for Home Affairs that will take place this month. That will be one of the topics that we will be considering, and we will make every effort to also look at the external border of the European Union. We are a country with a tradition of immigration. We have good immigration practices, and we have shown that we are able to integrate migrants, so we'll do our best to unite the 27 European nations around this topic of the utmost importance for Europe. On the issue of the prosecutor, we didn't even raise the issue. We have full confidence that Portugal will be able to lead us through this presidency, so this topic wasn't even raised. Agência Lusa. In the 2000 Portuguese presidency, the social pillar was also one of the aims, and we ended up with the Lisbon strategy. From 2000 to 2020, progress was made in terms of the euro and on the financial front, not so much so on the social front. Now, my question is, how is the Portuguese presidency going to once again focus on the social front, making it more binding? And there are countries such as Ireland and others that have their own views. And also, of course, perhaps the regulating of social matters may have been at the heart of Brexit. Now, a question for Charles Michel. How do you think that the EU-Africa summit will look? How would you like it to look? With all heads of state and government of the African continent, with the African Union? What kind of format would you like to see for that summit? I think it needs to be a summit that is agreed upon by the different authorities. There'll need to be a dialogue on that format. There was a meeting in December with the African Union. COVID, well, we planned the meeting, but we also imagined a video conference, but we ended up postponing it, so the meeting didn't take place. Now we'll need to see with the African authorities when another such meeting might take place and what its format will be. But more importantly, it's the aim that matters. We believe, like António Costa, that the European Union should work closely with all African countries. We have a lot of things that we can do together. We need to stimulate investment. We need to have strategies for sustainable development in Africa. We need to develop operational partnerships. And there are priorities in terms of the climate and in terms of the digital agenda. And that means that we need to work more with Africa. There's the post-Cotonou framework to consider for developing countries, African countries as well. And now we need to implement that framework. We have an agreement in principle. We need to once again talk about the debt of African nations. This is something that needs to be looked at so that they have fiscal capacity to develop infrastructure, access to education and health as well. We, on the 7th of May, in Porto, will be organizing a social summit. We will be preparing the summit with the European institutions, in particular the Commission, that will present its action plan for the social pillar. We'll be working with all social partners. And on the 7th of May, that summit will take place in the customs building of Oporto with civil society, social partners, the different institutions, so that we can undertake to develop the social pillar. Secondly, there will be the informal council on the morning of the 8th of May, which will focus on this topic. We will work towards a declaration that will restate our commitment to develop the social pillar. The social pillar doesn't work alone. The social pillar is a solid foundation that should allow us all to believe that we can do better given the challenges ahead. The climate transition, the digital transition. We don't want to leave anyone behind. Everyone must have an opportunity. This is fundamental because fear is what feeds opportunism. And if we want to combat opportunism, we have to make sure that our citizens trust in us. We're all fearful of COVID, so we need vaccines. But there are other fears. Some people fear that digitalization will lead to them being replaced by robots, that they'll lose their jobs. People sometimes fear that climate change and the climate transition will have a significant impact on certain industries, such as the automobile industry. And so we need to vaccinate ourselves against that fear. That means a strong social pillar that considers qualifications and skills, upskilling, fundamental. We need to make sure our companies are more competitive. We need enlarged social protection so that no one is left behind, so that we all have a place in the society of the future, which will be a more sustainable future in environmental terms, but it will also be a more digital future, more digital society.
Can you hear me? I hope you can hear me. I'm Maria Sara from Open TV Greece. I have a question on what you mentioned, the strengthening of the strategic autonomy as the priority of the EU. So, about Turkey and the tensions in East Mediterranean, the European Council last December decided to wait for the US. And I'm wondering, is it a good sign for the EU's strategic autonomy? Thank you very much.
Pardon de vous indiquer.
Peço desculpa, mas a decisão em dezembro não foi bem assim como disse. Houve uma situação que foi analisada, tomámos decisões relativamente à Turquia. Esse foi o primeiro ponto. That was the first point. In March, so we also need to look at the UN process. There's the issue of Cyprus as well. We were very clear. We need to make sure that there is respect. And this isn't enough to talk about strategic autonomy. We need to make sure that we develop the strategic autonomy of the European Union. And that doesn't mean Europe turning back on itself. We need a strong model. We need to have open economies. We need to be committed. We have the agreement on investment with China. There's the whole issue of ratification now, of course, to consider over the next few months. But strategic autonomy allows us to guarantee three important principles. One is European unity. We need to think about the aims and how to attain those aims. Secondly, we need to ensure that there is consistency. In other words, we need to make sure that we focus on common objectives. And thirdly, confidence. If we want a Europe that citizens believe in, so that citizens can believe in the European project, we need to be able to explain our decisions so that citizens stand behind us and so that all those in our institutions stand together, those who represent citizens. Susana Freixas-Sick, Portuguese TV. Just a follow-up with regards to vaccines. You both talked about the importance of vaccines, but the number of doses, that's for the vaccines approved, of course, are not sufficient. So can we expect new contracts in the near future with Pfizer and others? So additional doses in addition to the 300,000 and 600,000 doses already approved. Just a word on the vaccines. Since the beginning of the pandemic, the European Union has been very important in global terms in its push to mobilize 6 billion euros. We are investing like never before, as António Costa already pointed out. We mobilized researchers worldwide in 9 months. We were able to develop a vaccine that less than a year ago was unknown to the international community. Usually vaccines take up to 8-10 years to be developed and approved. Of course, we want to guarantee maximum level of transparency and credibility because the Medicines Agency procedures have to be respected. It was right at the end of December that agreement was given. The Commission has signed 6 contracts. We respect, of course, the procedures that guarantee transparency and respect for all European citizens. And so in the next few hours, we're expecting actually a second vaccine to be approved so that there'll be more doses made available. In the last few weeks and months, we wanted to have a volume of doses that will allow us to begin vaccinating throughout Europe. But of course, we need to make sure people are vaccinated throughout the world. We are working day and night with the support of member states to increase the number of vaccine doses made available to all citizens. But of course, we have to respect the independence of the European Medicines Agency because that's a guarantee of transparency and credibility vis-à-vis those vaccines. Is it difficult? Yes. Are people impatient? Of course. We want to make sure that the vaccines are deployed, but day after day, week after week, we will continue to roll out the vaccines, and I believe that we together, collectively, will be able to roll out the vaccines. This is the only way, in fact, to make sure that we push for an economic recovery. And of course, economic and social factors go together. These 2 pillars go hand in hand. In July, we mobilized unprecedented amounts. These are not virtual amounts. These are the amounts required to invest and promote economic development that will allow us to transition digitally, to promote a green transition as well. Sometimes there are fears, legitimate fears on the part of the population to do with all different aspects, COVID-19, climate change, the digital transition. So we need to be responsible, work together to make sure that we find the most pertinent and rapid solutions to these fears. I think we need to realize that this is an unprecedented moment in human history. We have never before had vaccination, simultaneous vaccination of 400 million people. This is in Europe alone. This is extraordinary, but we need to understand that you can't produce 450 million doses in one day, and you can't administer 450 million doses in one day. This is something that will be rolled out throughout the year. We are all aware of the calendar published by the European Commission. We know when the different vaccines will be delivered. That calendar may be changed because Perhaps there will be greater production capacity, more doses, or there might be problems in production. There was one particular case where there was a 24-hour delay in the delivery of the vaccines. And we also need to be able to manage our anxiety levels. I understand that anxiety. We're all sick of this threat that we've been facing. COVID-19. But think back to a few months ago. A few months ago, people were saying it's impossible that we'll see a vaccine developed soon. But look at us now. We have vaccines. They're available. We were able to acquire the vaccines. The European Commission did a fabulous job. It has rolled out these vaccines. Each member state has its own vaccination plan. We're all doing our utmost to do what is expected of us. You know our plan. Health professionals were considered a priority group. We began vaccinating the elderly in old age homes yesterday, and so we're going to be following our vaccination plan closely. But most of the vaccines will be administered in the second and third quarters of this year. But it is a plan that will be ongoing until the first quarter of next year. So we all need to be aware that the discovery of the vaccine, the production of the vaccine, its acquisition, its distribution, and then the administration of the vaccine cannot be done in a single day. It is a process that we will follow closely, methodically, in order to guarantee that all European citizens are vaccinated and protected against COVID-19. But that means we need a methodology, we need determination, and we need implementation. That's what we're facing under this presidency. That's why our motto is time to deliver for a fair, green and digital recovery. So there's the economic dimension to consider, but there's also the health dimension to consider. There was time required to discover the vaccine and then to produce it, and now the time has come to administer the vaccine, and that's what's happening in the different member states. And it must happen in all member states, because we will only be able to have freedom of movement and the kind of internal market we all expect when those living in Portugal, in Belgium, Hungary, Greece or Finland are all vaccinated. That is the only way that we collectively will be able to recover. But that doesn't mean that we should feel disheartened. No, it's a sign that we are fighting. We're fighting against a pandemic, and we're winning this battle because we already have a vaccine. We're winning this battle because we've already acquired the vaccine, and we're winning this battle because it is in all member states, and people are being vaccinated. So this is a battle we will win. But it is a battle that will take months. Thank you very much.